Hi everyone, this is Sarah or Lavely here with another video. I'm back from my Christmas and New Year's break with another I Draw Your BJD video. Except this time I'm not just drawing one BJD, I'm drawing three. And these three BJDs all belong to Denali Wind. Now she commented on a video of mine a short while ago saying I could pick one of her dolls to draw. And I just really couldn't pick between her three boys, so I thought why not just draw them all. I haven't had as much practice drawing boys. I tend to draw more girls than I do boys for some reason. It just ends up being how it happens. So this was a challenge. Not only that, but drawing three characters in one picture as opposed to just one meant it took a lot longer. I speed up my footage for speed draws obviously, but the original footage for this was over 10 hours long, and that doesn't even include the recording for the drawing itself, or the initial sketch. I did actually record that this time, but I did it in a way that, well, it wouldn't have looked right. OBS wasn't set up properly, and I hadn't, it wouldn't have worked. So, whoops. Anyway, I really enjoyed drawing these three. It was a bit of a challenge, but worthwhile, I think. Now, I've done something a bit different with this video. I actually have recorded a voiceover that you will hear shortly, just talking about my process and what I did and when and why, and just ramblings too. But yeah, anyway, if you would like me to draw your BJD, just leave a comment below or get in touch with me. I hope you enjoy the speed draw.
Alrighty, let's get on with this. So, at the very beginning of this, what I always do is I add a blank tone to the back of my drawing. This just helps me visualize the lighting, and with this what I wanted to do was to kind of separate these boys from their background, to make them a little bit brighter, I suppose, in different places or overall. So I just made a selection with them so I could apply slightly different shading to them than I did the background. And once I do this, I can get on with it. So the first thing I generally do is I add blank kind of tone to, or blank colors I suppose, to the drawing, and normally I do this to everything before I add detail, but for some bizarre reason I decided that I would kind of continue and add detail to Grizzly Bear's top. And all of these dots are done one by one. It almost destroyed me, I won't lie. If you see pauses in here, that is me stopping and just walking around for a bit, and just, oh, it was hard work. I could have used a fancy brush, but I mean, that would have taken, I don't know, I just decided it was easier this way, which, I mean, may or may not have actually been easier in hindsight, but I like how it turned out. It did, however, mean that I needed to have a big break after this. I needed to get outside and have a walk around because it was very tiring doing all of these dots, let me tell you. So I did this on one day, and then I actually did the rest on another occasion. So yeah, here I am continuing with the other blank colours. Now I could fill back at this, but I quite like the effect it has painting it, and because when I do paint it I can kind of take note of the creases in the clothing, the shadows, that sort of stuff. Some bits can appear lighter with how it mixes, because I am using the mixer brush. And since I'm colouring on top of my lines, it does pick up some of the black. And of course, the background too, because I have it set to sample all layers. I did something a bit different with this picture. I actually made a, I don't know what it's called. It's kind of like a clipping mask. If you look at my layers, you can kind of maybe see what I mean. But what it means essentially is that I am colouring on the selection I made before of just the guys. So if I am colouring near an edge, I can be quite lazy and go off it, and it will automatically keep everything I do within my selection. So that was nice. It meant that if I wanted to do flyaways with their hair and all that, I couldn't do that yet, but I knew I would make a separate layer for that later, and that would be fun. So yeah, just continuing to make all of these bits kind of coloured so I can get an overall idea of how everything is going to fit together. When I'm picking colours from my palette, I've got a reference picture next to me of, a screenshot rather, from one of Denali Wynn's videos showing these guys in these outfits. I'm just picking something that looks closest. I'm not thinking about the overall tone or the shadows too much, because I know I can add filters and gradients to fix this for me later. This took a long time. I don't really enjoy this step. I find it quite tedious and boring, and try and get through it as quickly as possible, but because there were 3 characters here as opposed to the one that I'm used to doing, it just took that much longer. So yeah, it was a bit of a long process to get this all done, but yeah. If you've seen Lakota's sweater, it's kind of red tone, and I kind of build up on it here. So yeah, there's bits of yellow in it, and then I kind of build up that with the red. Looks a bit weird initially, but trust me, it all comes together in the end. Now I do save the darker colours for last, just because I know that they can really change my perspective of what I am working on. If I jump in and use a lot of dark colours straight away, I find that the whole drawing as a whole becomes quite flat and can almost get too dark, and I didn't want that for this. I wanted it to be a light, happy, warm drawing. So yeah, I decided to add some stitch-like lines over the white stripes just to make it look more realistic, like a sweater. I think at this point I work on their faces, or, well, oh yeah, I forgot those parts. Yeah, it must be time for the faces. Okay, initially they always look kind of creepy, and I just build on it and build on it until they don't. Now, skin tones are tricky, and they are made up of a lot of different shades, different colours, so I often flick between different things and make use of my blending brush so that it all kind of fits in together. I find it really important to make sure that the faces look okay before I move on, because these make or break it for me, and I mean, if I'm not happy with their face, I'm probably not going to be happy with the rest of it. And on the other hand, if I'm really happy with the face, it really motivates me to get the rest done, and done well. For that reason, I often do the faces first, but I did it differently this time. I don't know. Oh yeah, and Keipu's eyebrows, initially I'd made them same to match his hair, but realised that nope, they should be darker, and he instantly looked more like himself. Okay, what I'm doing here is just tying everything together. So what I do is I make a group for everything I've done so far. I could duplicate that group and then merge it. Then I have this flat layer with everything I've done so far. With this, I can then adjust the levels and the color balance just to help tie everything together. You know how before I said I didn't really worry about that? This is why. This step helps tie everything together for me. Otherwise, I mean, it would look like a mess. Different bits would stand out too much, or just look like the colors wouldn't match. That's really all it is. Next, what I do is I go through and I select different parts and I add shadows and shading using gradients. I don't normally, or well, I don't always use black for this, but I decided that since the rest of this drawing was very light and very soft, it kind of needed that for the contrast. So I'm just going through, selecting different parts, adding gradients to add shadows for me. It's really easy, I quite like this, and the best thing about it is it adds shadows without destroying all of those lines, those textures that I've already created all that work. Eventually, when I get up there, you'll see that I'm adding it to Grizzly Bear's sweater, as you can see there, his jersey. And it's great because you can still see the work below, which I did not want to have to do again. So yeah, just adding different creases, shading to the face because I always forget that and it makes such a difference. And finally on Lakota as well, and same for him with his sweater, it really just helps make it stand out, making those arms a little bit darker, the bottoms of his sleeves a bit darker, just all that. Alright, I often zoom out like this just to see if I'm happy with it and if there's any bits that I'm missing. Okay, so now that I've done that, I can go through and start adding more detail, working on top of what I have done in a new layer. Not that I always use a new layer, but to tidy up the lines, some bits look a bit shaky, a bit rough, so I'm just trying to smooth these out, tidy them up, especially since in adjusting the tones and the color balance, the levels, all that stuff, it kind of loses some of that detail, some of those outlines, I suppose. So I'm adding those back in to just help make them stand out again so they don't blend too much into the background. So yeah, and since I'm working on a new layer now and I'm not worrying about any masks, I get to add those flyaways, add those extra details, kind of clean it up a bit. Okay, so now I'm drawing Keipu's tattoo. I really wanted to make sure that this was visible. It's such a gorgeous tattoo. I had to put it in there. Initially I drew it too high, but that was an easy fix. I just get to copy it and drag it down and done, easy. And it was around this point that I actually took a picture of Keipu and sent it to Denali Wind just because, wow, he's gorgeous, right? I had to just kind of stop and stare at him for a bit. He really reminds me of an anime character that I quite liked. But yeah, anyway, I digress. I'm tidying some lines still. There's not really any method to the madness. It's just me flicking back and forth, seeing what bits need fixing, what bits could do with some tweaking, some tidying, some trimming, just whatever really. And then I added freckles to Keipu because why not? Now, as much as I like the harsh shadows that are caused by the gradients that I made, I do still blend some of these out since it does help make it all look a bit more realistic, because not all shadows cause harsh lines. There are curves in fabrics, some bits are softer than others, so I want that to come through in my picture. Finally, adding the laces to these wonderful snow boots. Bit of detail here and there, cleaning bits up, same as always. Grizzly Bear's overalls get the treatment, just tidying them all up. In hindsight, I could have added more shading, more depth to these, but I wanted to still be sane by the end of it, but in all seriousness, I didn't want to make everything detailed. If everything was pristine, that would be great for sure, but that's not what I was going for. Now their faces were looking a bit grey, so I did add little pink overlays to their faces. And Keipu's hands were too big, so I was able to make them a bit smaller, which was great. Photoshop really is handy for this sort of thing. To make sure the background fitted in with everything, I just added some simple highlights to the edge of the pavers just to make them, you know, look a bit better. Almost forgot to add detail to the bottom of Lakota's shirt. Now I added my signature because I thought I was done, but really I wasn't. I thought they looked a bit strange, just kind of floating over this pathway, so I decided to give them shadows. To do this, I selected all of them, duplicated the selection, filled it with black, and then manipulated it as a multiply layer so that it was a shadow beneath them. Perspective warp was really handy for this, and although not shown, I did add a Gaussian blur to the shadows just to make them look a bit less sharp. Some final adjustments to the levels and colour balance, and we are done. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you next time.